Oh hey, it's Emily, and I wanted to take a minute to film a quick video about my reaction to both reading and then watching the recent Dune adaptation. I meant for this to be a full-on vlog of the experience, and that just didn't end up happening. But I did finish Dune, and after that went to go see the adaptation, so I wanted to give some quick reactions to both. So I actually started reading this physically. I think for the first 100 to 150 pages I read it physically. I had previously started listening to the audiobook last year, actually, when it was originally going to be coming out, and it's sometimes really jarring for me to have audiobooks where there's one central narrator, but then they hire other actors to perform the characters, just their dialogue. That can sometimes be really jarring to me, actually. Sometimes it's done really well and it's really cool, and sometimes it's a little bit harder for me, especially going into a world and a writing style that's a little bit more dense and complex. And so I actually had stopped the audiobook and wanted to return to it physically. And then once I was a little more adjusted to the world and the characters and felt like I knew a little bit more what was going on, actually then used an Audible credit for the audiobook and continued listening that way. I did physically read parts of it as well as listening to the audiobook, but for the most part continued with the audiobook. And the audiobook is really good. So it's not completely done in that style. There actually is one narrator who is, I would say, the predominant narrator, and then there are certain scenes in the audiobook, there are periodic scenes that are that they actually have different actors for specific characters and that will act out that scene and that dialogue. And so it's a little bit of a mix of things, which is just interesting, and was really awesome to listen to. I thought the narrator did a really good job, and I did enjoy the other actors that they brought in to perform the different characters. It can just sometimes be a little bit jarring if there's too much back and forth, but I actually think they did a pretty good job with it. Anyway, so that's kind of my listening and starting to read experience, a little bit of my history with that. And it did take me a minute to get into this. It is just, the writing style is just very different than what I'm used to. And so it did take a minute for me, quite a bit for me to really feel, and I think even with listening to the audiobook, I think there still were quite a few details that I missed. There's just a lot that goes into the politics and the world and the religion of this book, and so I think listening to the audiobook, it took me a while to get into it and feel like I was a bit more oriented, and I'm sure that there were things that I missed, and I think there is definitely value on a reread to going back and taking it very slowly and annotating so that I can maybe catch some more of those details that I missed. But to introduce the overall concept of the world and kind of the backstory, you follow there's, prior to the story, they don't really talk much about this in this story, but I think it's kind of helpful going in there. Prior to the story, there was basically a revolt against artificial intelligence, and so technology, there was a resistance to a lot of different kinds of technology, especially artificial intelligence or human-like technology, or technology that was aiming to do things that humans could do. And it's sometime after that, it's still, although technology is very interesting and different in this world, it is still a while after that, and there still is quite a bit of technology involved. And there are a bunch of different planets that have been inhabited, and there's kind of a ruling family on some of these different worlds. And Paul is part of House Atreides. He is the son of the person who's leading this family, this House Atreides. They live on Caladan, and his mom is part of a group called the Bene Gesserit, and they have a very mysterious set of abilities and history and influence on this world. And their family is instructed to actually go to instructed by the Emperor to go and essentially take over, or not take over, but like take leadership of another planet called Arrakis, aka Dune. And it's a desert planet, and they're taking over for House Harkonnen. And there's definitely some tension and, expected to be some hostilities with House Harkonnen, as well as the Freemen, which are the native people of this planet. And Dune is, or Arrakis, is the sole source of something that is called the spice. And it's a substance that is allowed for transport between these different worlds, and allowed for some of the abilities and some of the things that some of these people can do come from ingesting this spice. So spice is a very important part of the intergalactic economy. It's a key part of transport. There's a guild that controls, or kind of is a very influential part of this spice, and being able to use it to enhance. It basically enhances the physical, mental abilities of people who take it, and that has become a very important part for actually being able to navigate and use the ships that they use in between these different worlds. So that's part of why it's important for transport. So this planet is the sole source of this spice. And so Paul's family very quickly becomes embroiled in a lot of politics between House Harkonnen, that was in control of this planet, the Freemen, who are the natives of this planet, who actually were originally there and survive in the desert. There are also these giant worms that live in the desert and are part of the dangers of this planet. And so you follow Paul's family trying to figure out what's going on. They know that it's going to be a very precarious situation, and so they're trying to navigate the politics of everything going on, and they're trying to make sure that they survive everything, not just the planet, but also kind of stepping into a dangerous situation and a potentially very precarious situation with this other house, and whether or not the Emperor actually really supports them. Whether or not the Emperor thinks that House Atreides has become too powerful and might challenge him. And so they're trying to navigate this. It's super interesting. It's a super interesting world. It's a super interesting set of politics. There's also, I mentioned the Bene Gesserit, which is a group that his mother is a part of and has been trained by. So Paul has actually been trained not only from his father's side of the family in this politics, but he's also been trained in some of these Bene Gesserit abilities by his mother. And she can do some interesting things. She's a badass. I really like Jessica. So I found it to be a hard to get into book with the writing style, but once you kind of get into it and you kind of start starting to figure some stuff out, it's just super interesting. So I was really just intrigued to continue to see what was happening. I really like some of these characters. Even in some of the slower moments, I was still very intrigued to see what was going to be happening to this family, and kind of exploring the desert and exploring some of the other things going on. I really like Jessica's character. Paul is definitely an interesting character that I'm excited to continue to learn more about. And the way this left off, I'm definitely very intrigued to see what happens next. So very excited to continue in this series. And as I said, I also got to see the movie, and overall, I think they did a pretty incredible job adapting this. Obviously, it's very, very difficult to adapt something. I'm glad that they are hopefully going to be able to do a part 2 and spread it out. Honestly, I think it would have been fine to do a mini-series and really give it some time. But I'm glad that they're at least spreading it out into hopefully at least 2 movies to be able to sit with. I mean, it's a 600-page book that is pretty dense. So I'm glad that they were able to spread that out. It's unfortunate that they had to take out some scenes that I was excited about. They took out some scenes that I think really helped develop Jessica's character in particular. You really get to know in the book just kind of what a badass she is. And and the performance by the actress portraying Jessica was I think really good. I think she did a great job. There just is some left out in her, in the movie. There's some left out of what you see of her development in the book as a character that I really would have liked to see. I thought the performances by a lot of the cast were really, really good. I think, you know, I think Timothy did really great as Paul. I really liked, I'm blanking on the guy who played Paul's father, Leto. I think he did really a good job. Jessica, having Jason Momoa as Duncan, I'm never going to be able to unsee Jason Momoa as Duncan when I reread this. Fabulous, fabulous. And, you know, visually very stunning movie. I thought overall they did a really great job. Yeah, I can definitely see some of the criticisms that I've been seeing, but I had a really good time with it, and I think you get to kind of the heart of a lot of what's happening in the chunk of the book that they covered. I mean, it's going to be really hard to adapt something that's, you know, pretty expansive and complicated like this. But yeah, I was overall pretty impressed, and again, visually very stunning. So at the very least, I think it was just very entertaining to watch, because I think the production value, you know, the locations that they went to, costuming, set design, I think was really, really great. So yeah, that is a hopefully relatively brief set of thoughts about the book and the movie. I'm very excited to continue in this world and read, I believe it's Dune Messiah next, and I'm not exactly sure when I'll be continuing with the series, but that is definitely something I'm hoping to do in the near future, and definitely hope to reread it before the next movie comes out, you know, hopefully. So thank you so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts if you have read Dune or watched the adaptation, and yeah, let me know what you thought below, and I'll be sure to link my Twitter and Instagram down below as well. That's where I like to hang out. As I said, please subscribe for more bookish content, and I will also leave more information about how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement, and I will see you in the next one. Bye everyone.